The morning sun beat down mercilessly on the Naval Special Warfare Training Compound in Coronado, California. Sarah Martinez wiped sweat from her brow as she watched the elite SEAL team prepare for their monthly fitness assessment. At 26, she had earned her place as a Navy physical therapist through years of dedication and countless hours studying human performance. Her small frame and quiet demeanor often made others underestimate her, but Sarah had learned long ago that appearances could be deceiving. The SEALs moved with practiced efficiency, checking their gear and stretching muscles that had been honed through years of brutal training. Sarah had been working with this particular team for 6 months, helping them recover from injuries and optimize their physical performance. She knew each of their strengths and weaknesses, had studied their movement patterns, and understood the biomechanics behind their incredible abilities. Lieutenant Commander Jake Thompson, the team leader, noticed Sarah observing from the sidelines. At 32, Jake was a decorated veteran, with multiple deployments under his belt. His respect for Sarah's expertise had grown over the months, though he still saw her primarily as support staff rather than someone who could match their physical capabilities. "Morning, Doc," Jake called out, using the nickname the team had given her. "Here? To patch us up after we destroy ourselves on this course?" Sarah smiled and shook her head. "Actually, I was hoping to observe the full assessment today. I'm working on a research project about optimal training methodologies." The obstacle course stretched before them, like a medieval torture device designed by someone with an intimate knowledge of human limitations. It began with a 200-meter sprint, followed by a rope climb that seemed to reach toward the clouds. Next came a series of monkey bars that tested grip strength and coordination, then a wall climb that required both power and technique. The course continued with a low crawl under barbed wire, a tire flip section, and ended with another 200-meter sprint to the finish line. Petty Officer Marcus Rodriguez, a compact powerhouse from Texas, overheard the conversation. "You sure you want to see this, Doc? It might give you nightmares about what the human body can endure." The other team members chuckled, but there was no malice in their humor. Sarah had earned their respect through her professionalism and genuine care for their well-being. Still, the idea that someone outside their brotherhood could truly understand what they went through was foreign to them. "The current record stands at 4 minutes and 37 seconds, Petty Officer David Kim announced, checking his stopwatch. "Set by our very own Lieutenant Commander Thompson here, 3 years ago." Jake nodded acknowledgement, but kept his focus on the course ahead. "That was a good day. Let's see if any of you can come close to touching it." Sarah had studied this course extensively. She knew the optimal techniques for each obstacle, had calculated the energy expenditure required, and understood the physiological demands it placed on the human body. More importantly, she had been training in secret for months, using her knowledge of exercise science to maximize her preparation. One by one, the SEALs attacked the course with savage intensity. Marcus powered through in 5 minutes and 12 seconds, his raw strength carrying him over obstacles that would stop most people cold. David used his technical precision to complete it in 4 minutes and 58 seconds, every movement calculated and efficient. The other team members posted respectable times, each pushing their bodies to the absolute limit. As the last SEAL finished, Sarah found herself stepping forward. The question hung in the air like smoke from a distant fire. Several team members exchanged glances, unsure if they had heard correctly. Jake raised an eyebrow, his expression shifting from casual interest to something approaching concern. "Doc, this isn't exactly a casual jog around the block," he said, carefully. "This course has hospitalized people who thought they were prepared for it." Sarah appreciated his concern, but she had made her decision months ago. "I understand the risks. I've been studying this course, and I think I have some insights that might be valuable for the research." Petty Officer Tony Williams, a former college football player from Alabama, let out a low whistle. "She's serious, isn't she?" The team gathered around, their expressions ranging from curious to skeptical. These men had dedicated their lives to physical excellence, had pushed their bodies through training that most people couldn't imagine surviving. The idea that someone outside their world could simply walk up and attempt their course was both admirable and naive. "Look, Doc, Marcus said, his tone gentle but firm. We appreciate what you're trying to do. But this course isn't about understanding theory. It's about raw physical capability and mental toughness that takes years to develop. Sarah nodded, understanding their perspective completely. She had expected this reaction, had prepared for the doubt she saw in their eyes. But she had also prepared for something else entirely. I know how this looks, she said quietly. And I know what you're all thinking. But I've been training specifically for this course for the past 8 months. Not just physically, but mentally. I've studied every technique, analyzed every movement pattern, and optimized every transition. Jake crossed his arms, his leadership instincts warring with his desire to protect someone he considered under his care. Even if you've been training, Doc, there's a difference between preparation and execution. This course has broken people who looked a lot stronger than you. The morning heat was beginning to intensify, and Sarah could feel sweat forming despite her calm exterior. She had known this moment would come eventually, had prepared for the skepticism and the well-meaning attempts to protect her from herself. But she had also prepared for something none of them expected. I understand your concerns, she said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline beginning to course through her system. But I need to ask you to trust me on this. I know what I'm doing. David Kim spoke up, his analytical mind working through the implications. What exactly are you hoping to prove here, Doc? That physical therapy knowledge translates to elite performance? Sarah shook her head. I'm not trying to prove anything about physical therapy. I'm trying to demonstrate that sometimes the best training isn't just about raw power or traditional methods. Sometimes it's about understanding efficiency, leverage, and optimal movement patterns. The SEALs exchanged more glances, their skepticism evident but tempered by curiosity. Sarah had worked with them long enough that they trusted her judgment in most matters. She had never put herself or anyone else at unnecessary risk, had always demonstrated sound reasoning in her professional recommendations. Lieutenant Commander Thompson made the decision that would change everything. All right, Doc. If you're determined to do this, we're not going to stop you. But we're going to spot you on every obstacle. And if I see anything that looks dangerous, we're pulling the plug immediately. Sarah felt a surge of gratitude mixed with determination. That's all I ask. As she moved toward the starting line, the team's casual banter faded into focused attention. They had seen thousands of people attempt this course over the years, had witnessed every type of failure imaginable. Most people underestimated the mental component, the way exhaustion could turn simple obstacles into insurmountable barriers. You sure about this, Doc? Marcus asked one final time. Sarah positioned herself at the starting line, her mind cycling through months of preparation and analysis. She had studied videos of every SEAL who had attempted this course, had identified the optimal techniques for someone of her size and build, had trained specifically to maximize her efficiency rather than relying on brute force. I'm sure, she said simply. David Kim raised his stopwatch, the same device that had recorded hundreds of attempts over the years. On your mark, the SEALs spread out along the course, positioned to assist if needed, but secretly expecting to witness a valiant, but ultimately unsuccessful attempt. They had seen dedicated athletes fail at this course, had watched people with impressive fitness levels crumble under the combined physical and mental demands. Get set. Sarah took a deep breath, her mind entering the focused state she had cultivated through months of mental preparation. She could visualize every obstacle, every transition, every technique she had practiced until it became second nature. The stopwatch seemed to hover in David's hand for an eternity, the morning sun casting long shadows across the course that had humbled so many before her. In that moment of stillness before the storm, everything hung in balance. Go. Sarah exploded from the starting line with a burst of speed that caught everyone off guard. Her stride was different from what the SEALs expected. Shorter but incredibly efficient, each step perfectly placed to maximize forward momentum while conserving energy. She had studied the biomechanics of elite sprinters, understanding that her smaller frame required a different approach than the powerful, ground-eating strides of her male counterparts. Marcus found himself jogging alongside her, ready to provide assistance, but struggling to keep pace with her unexpected velocity. "Damn. Doc moves fast," he muttered under his breath. The first obstacle loomed ahead, a 30-foot rope climb that had defeated countless attempts. Sarah approached it with none of the hesitation typically seen in first-time attempts. Instead of grabbing the rope high and muscling her way up like most people tried to do, she employed a technique she had perfected through months of practice. Her hands found the rope at shoulder height, and she immediately locked it between her feet, using a specific wrapping technique that created maximum friction. What happened next left the SEALs speechless. Sarah ascended the rope, using a fluid, rhythmic technique that seemed to defy the usual struggle associated with this obstacle. She had studied rock climbing techniques, incorporating elements that most military personnel never considered. Her core engaged in a spiraling motion that transferred power efficiently from her lower body to her upper body, while her grip remained relaxed to prevent premature fatigue. "She's using a double footlock with a twist technique," David observed, his analytical mind recognizing the sophistication of her approach. "That's advanced climbing methodology." Lieutenant Commander Thompson watched in growing amazement as Sarah reached the top of the rope in what appeared to be record time. But it was her descent that truly impressed him. Instead of sliding down and burning her hands, she controlled her descent using the same footlocking technique, arriving at the bottom with her grip strength intact for the challenges ahead. The monkey bars stretched before her like a test of pure grip endurance. This obstacle had ended many strong attempts, as the metal bars quickly drained forearm strength and tested mental resilience when exhaustion set in. Sarah approached with a strategy none of them had ever seen employed. Instead of grabbing each bar in sequence like most people attempted, Sarah used a technique borrowed from competitive gymnasts. She incorporated a slight swinging motion that allowed momentum to carry her forward, reducing the static load on her grip. More importantly, she alternated her grip pattern, sometimes using a hook grip, sometimes a full grip, constantly varying the stress on different muscle groups. Tony Williams positioned himself beneath the bars, ready to catch her when she fell. But as Sarah progressed across the obstacle with fluid efficiency, his role shifted from potential rescuer to amazed observer. "She's not even struggling," he said in disbelief. The wall climb presented the next challenge. A 12-foot barrier that required both upper body strength and technique. Most people approached it by trying to muscle their way over, resulting in wasted energy and potential failure. Sarah had studied parkour techniques, understanding that momentum and leverage could overcome raw strength limitations. She hit the wall at the perfect angle, using her running momentum to carry her up while simultaneously employing a specific footwork pattern she had practiced thousands of times. Her hands found the top edge, but instead of struggling to pull herself over, she used a hip-hop technique that brought her center of gravity over the wall with minimal upper body strain. "That was textbook parkour," Marcus observed, his respect growing with each obstacle. "Where the hell did she learn that?" The low crawl under barbed wire tested different aspects of physical conditioning. The ability to maintain speed while staying low, core strength to prevent sagging, and mental toughness to push through discomfort. Sarah had anticipated this challenge, understanding that her smaller stature could be an advantage if properly utilized. She dropped into a modified military crawl that she had perfected through hours of practice. Her technique was different from the traditional approach. Instead of staying completely flat, she maintained a slight arch that allowed her to move faster, while still clearing the wire. Her breathing pattern remained controlled, a result of months of conditioning work that had prepared her cardiovascular system for sustained effort under stress. Jake found himself running alongside the course, his initial concern evolving into genuine excitement. This wasn't just a good attempt. This was something special. Sarah's technique was flawless, her transitions between obstacles seamless, and her pace never wavered. The tire flip section presented a different type of challenge. Raw power applied repeatedly over distance. The massive tire weighed 250 pounds, requiring participants to deadlift it and flip it end over end for 50 meters. This was where most people expected Sarah's attempt to falter, as the obstacle seemed designed for maximum upper body and core strength. But Sarah had prepared for this too. Instead of approaching the tire like a traditional deadlift, she used a technique borrowed from strongman competitions. Her grip was wider than expected, her stance modified to accommodate her height, and her lifting pattern incorporated leg drive in a way that maximized mechanical advantage. The first flip was smooth and controlled, the second equally efficient. As she progressed down the tire flip section, the SEALs began to realize they were witnessing something unprecedented. Not only was she completing each obstacle, she was doing so with a level of technical proficiency that spoke to months of dedicated preparation. "Her form is better than some of our guys," David admitted, his stopwatch forgotten as he watched in fascination. The final 200-meter sprint approached. And this was where most attempts fell apart. The accumulated fatigue from the previous obstacles typically reduced the final sprint to a labored jog, with participants fighting to simply reach the finish line. Sarah had planned for this too, understanding that pacing throughout the course was crucial to maintaining speed at the end. As she began the final sprint, her form remained remarkably composed. The months of specific conditioning work became evident. Her breathing was controlled, her stride length consistent, her arm swing efficient. She had trained her body to perform under fatigue, had conditioned her mind to push through the discomfort that typically derailed final efforts. The SEALs found themselves running alongside her, no longer as potential rescuers, but as witnesses to something extraordinary. Their initial smirks had long since faded, replaced by expressions of growing amazement and respect. "She's going to break the record," Tony said, his voice filled with disbelief. Lieutenant Commander Thompson looked at his watch, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. Sarah's pace hadn't diminished. If anything, she seemed to be accelerating toward the finish line. Her technique remained flawless, her determination evident in every stride. The finish line drew closer, and David Kim's stopwatch continued its relentless countdown. The SEALs had seen their share of impressive performances over the years, had witnessed extraordinary feats of human endurance and determination, but nothing had prepared them for this moment. Watching someone they had underestimated completely redefine their understanding of what was possible. Sarah crossed the finish line with a final burst of speed that left everyone stunned into silence. She didn't collapse in exhaustion like most finishers. We didn't gasp for air or struggle to remain standing. Instead, she performed a controlled cool-down routine. Her breathing elevated but manageable. Her form still precise despite the incredible effort she had just expended. David Kim stared at his stopwatch in disbelief, reading the numbers multiple times to ensure he hadn't made an error. The silence stretched for several seconds as the team processed what they had just witnessed. Marcus was the first to speak, his voice barely above a whisper. David looked up from his stopwatch, his expression a mixture of shock and admiration. The number on the display seemed impossible, challenging everything they thought they knew about this course and their own capabilities. The morning sun continued to beat down on the Coronado training compound, but something fundamental had changed in those few minutes. The SEALs stood around Sarah in stunned silence, their worldview shifting as they processed the implications of what they had just witnessed. Sarah finally caught her breath enough to speak, her voice steady despite the extraordinary effort she had just completed. "So," she said with a slight smile, "how did I do?" David Kim's hands trembled slightly as he held up the stopwatch for everyone to see. The digital display read 4 minutes and 19 seconds. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the distant sound of waves crashing against the shore and the rhythmic cadence of other training exercises happening across the compound. "That's impossible," Marcus whispered. But even as he spoke the words, he knew he had witnessed the impossible become reality. Lieutenant Commander Thompson took the stopwatch from David's hands, studying the display as if staring at it longer might change the numbers. 4 minutes and 19 seconds. Not only had Sarah completed the course, she had shattered his 3-year-old record by 18 full seconds. In the world of elite military fitness, such margins represented the difference between good and legendary. "Doc," Jake said slowly, his voice filled with a mixture of respect and bewilderment. "You just crushed a record that took me 15 years of military training to set." Sarah stood before them, her breathing finally returning to normal, but her mind was racing. The months of secret preparation had paid off beyond her wildest expectations. She had known she could complete the course, had believed she could post a competitive time, but breaking the standing record had been a dream she barely dared to entertain. "How?" Tony asked, his single word carrying the weight of everyone's confusion. "How did you do that?" Sarah looked around at the faces surrounding her, seeing the genuine curiosity and respect in their eyes. These men had dedicated their lives to physical excellence, had pushed their bodies through training that would break most people. Their question deserved a complete answer. 8 months ago, I started studying this course obsessively, she began, her voice gaining confidence as she spoke. I analyzed video footage of every attempt I could find, broke down the biomechanics of each obstacle, and identified the most efficient techniques for someone with my physical characteristics. She gestured toward the rope climb behind them. For the rope, I studied competitive climbing techniques and adapted them for speed rather than endurance. The footlock pattern I used is actually borrowed from arborists who need to ascend quickly while conserving grip strength. Marcus shook his head in amazement. That explains the technique. But technique alone doesn't account for that time. You're right, Sarah agreed. Technique was only part of it. I spent months conditioning my body specifically for this course. Not general fitness. Targeted training for each obstacle's specific demands. She pointed to the monkey bars. For grip endurance, I didn't just do pull-ups. I trained with a climbing coach who taught me how to vary grip positions to prevent premature fatigue. I learned to distribute the load across different muscle groups throughout the traverse. David Kim's analytical mind was working overtime, trying to process the implications of what he was hearing. You, essentially, reverse-engineered our course and optimized your training for it. Exactly, Sarah confirmed. But it went deeper than that. I studied sports psychology, learned breathing techniques from free divers, incorporated plyometric training methods from track and field. I approached this course like a puzzle to be solved, rather than a barrier to overcome through raw strength. Lieutenant Commander Thompson found himself re-evaluating everything he thought he knew about elite performance. The tire flips. How did someone your size generate that kind of power? Sarah smiled, remembering the countless hours she had spent perfecting that specific technique. Strongman competitors have been solving that problem for decades. It's not about having the biggest muscles, it's about leverage, timing, and technique. I studied video of the world's strongest women and adapted their methods for speed rather than maximum weight. The team stood in a circle around her, their initial shock giving way to professional curiosity. These men were students of human performance in their own right, and they recognized mastery when they saw it, even when it came from an unexpected source. The mental component was just as important, Sarah continued. I worked with a sports psychologist to develop visualization techniques. I ran this course in my mind hundreds of times before ever attempting it physically. By the time I started today, my brain already knew exactly how every transition should feel. Tony Williams scratched his head, a slow grin spreading across his face. So while we've been relying on traditional military training methods, you basically created a graduate-level course in obstacle course optimization. Something like that. Sarah laughed, feeling the tension of the past months finally beginning to release. Though I have to admit, knowing something intellectually and executing it under pressure are two completely different things. Jake looked at his team, seeing the same realization in their eyes that was forming in his own mind. Doc, what you've just demonstrated isn't just impressive, it's revolutionary. You've shown that there might be more efficient ways to approach the training we've been doing for decades. The implications were staggering. Military training had evolved over generations, refined through combat experience, and proven in the crucible of real-world operations. But Sarah had demonstrated that scientific analysis and targeted preparation could achieve results that even the most dedicated traditional training couldn't match. I need to ask you something, Marcus said, his tone serious but respectful. Was this just about proving a point? Or did you have something bigger in mind? Sarah had hoped someone would ask that question. I want to revolutionize how we approach physical training in the military. Not just for special operations, but across all branches. We have access to sports science, biomechanics research, and performance optimization techniques that most military training programs haven't fully incorporated. David Kim nodded slowly, understanding the broader vision. You're talking about applying the same analytical approach you used here to redesign training protocols. Exactly. Imagine if we could reduce injury rates, improve performance outcomes, and shorten training timelines by applying evidence-based optimization techniques. The potential impact could be enormous. Lieutenant Commander Thompson felt his leadership instincts engaging. He could see the strategic value in what Sarah was proposing, but he also understood the challenges of implementing change in an institution built on tradition and proven methods. The military isn't exactly known for embracing rapid change, he said carefully. How do you propose getting buy-in from people who've been doing things the same way for generations? Quote, Sarah had anticipated this question too. The same way, I convinced you to let me attempt this course. Through demonstration. Results speak louder than theory. What happened here today is proof of concept. Now we need to scale it and prove it works across different populations and scenarios. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Master Chief Peterson, a grizzled veteran who had overseen training at the facility for over 2 decades. He had heard about the commotion and come to investigate, expecting to find someone being treated for injuries sustained during an ill-advised attempt at the course. Instead, he found a group of his most elite operators standing around a Navy physical therapist with expressions of genuine awe on their faces. What's going on here? Master Chief asked, his experienced eyes taking in the scene. Jake stepped forward, his respect for the Master Chief evident in his bearing. Master Chief, you need to see this. Doc just ran our course in 4 minutes and 19 seconds. Master Chief Peterson's expression shifted from casual interest to intense scrutiny. He had seen that course defeat Marines, Army Rangers, and even other SEALs. The idea that someone outside the special operations community could not only complete it, but set a new record, challenged his understanding of human capability. Show me the time, he said simply. David Kim handed over the stopwatch, and Master Chief studied the display with the same careful attention Jake had shown. His weathered face revealed nothing of his thoughts, but his silence spoke volumes. Finally, he looked up at Sarah with eyes that had evaluated thousands of military personnel over the years. Ma'am, I've been overseeing training at this facility for 22 years. I've seen every type of athlete you can imagine attempt that course. What you just accomplished shouldn't be possible for someone without years of specialized military training. Sarah met his gaze steadily, understanding that his opinion carried enormous weight within the community. Master Chief, I believe we're just scratching the surface of human potential. What I did today wasn't superhuman. It was optimized human performance, applied to a specific challenge. Master Chief Peterson had built his career on recognizing excellence and potential. He could see both in the young woman standing before him, but he also understood the broader implications of what she was suggesting. If what you're proposing is legitimate, he said slowly, then you're talking about fundamentally changing how we prepare our people for the challenges they'll face in the field. Yes, sir, Sarah replied without hesitation. And I believe those changes could save lives, improve mission success rates, and reduce the physical toll that military service takes on our people. The group fell silent again, each person processing the magnitude of what had transpired and what it might mean for the future. A physical therapist had just redefined what they thought was possible, using methods that challenged decades of established training doctrine. Master Chief Peterson made a decision that would change Sarah's life and potentially impact military training philosophy for years to come. Ma'am, I want you to write up everything you just told us. Every technique, every training method, every piece of research you used. I'm going to make sure it gets to people who can do something with it. As the group began to disperse, each person carrying with them a new understanding of human potential, and the power of optimized preparation, Sarah felt a profound sense of accomplishment. She had not only achieved her personal goal, but had potentially opened a door to revolutionizing how the military approached physical training. The record board that had displayed Jake's time for 3 years would soon bear new numbers. But more importantly, the mindset of everyone who witnessed Sarah's achievement had been permanently altered. Sometimes the most profound changes begin with someone simply saying, "Let me try," and having the courage to back up those words with extraordinary preparation and flawless execution. The morning sun was now high overhead, casting short shadows across the compound where history had quietly been made. Sarah Martinez had proven that, with the right combination of scientific analysis, targeted preparation, and unwavering determination, the impossible could become inevitable.